Honorable Men Discord. Oshkino addresses Beanie Siegel. Let's talk about it. As always, welcome back to another episode. If you haven't already, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Tell a friend to tell a friend. I drop episodes daily at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. So, listen, what I have queued up right now is Beanie Siegel addressing Oskino, who was a former state property member. For those of you that don't know, and state property was part of the whole rock, the rock umbrella. So there was the Rock with Jay-Z, Dame Dash, Memphis Bleak, and then state property was Oskino, Beanie Siegel, and I want to say, was PD Crack part of that? I think PD Crack was in there, Neef and Buck, and I might be missing someone. It's been some years now. But so, apparently it seems as though Oskino might have, in a separate interview, brought up the fact that he remembers seeing Beanie Siegel whipping on Gillie the Kid. Now, Beanie Siegel, Oskino, Gillie the Kid, they're all from Philadelphia, for those of you that don't know. Just educating those that don't know that may be watching this episode. So, Oskino, who's in my thumbnail, on a separate occasion mentioned the fact that he saw Beanie Siegel whipping on Gillie the Kid. Now, Oskino, right now, I guess he doesn't have a good relationship with Gillie the Kid, which is why he shared that story. But here in this video, Beanie Siegel's addressing that story. So I'm going to play that, and then I'm going to play Oskino's response to Beanie Siegel. So let's get into it.
Talking about back in the day with, he said he saw you whipping on Gillie. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, no, this should be. I think there's a difference between real journalism and gossip. Real journalism and gossip. When you, I mean, if that's what you choose to do to make your money, man, just know that what make you laugh, make you cry, the world watching. Once you get on this microphone in front of that camera, don't go away. That's part of your thing. So, just be careful, man.
Yeah.
On what you choose to do to make your money.
Yeah.
Gotta be careful. Me and Gillie cool. We good.
Okay.
We had a little situation. It ain't go how main man presenting it.
Yeah.
And me and Gillie, all right.
Cool.
I can say this though. A lot of people be having revisionist history. So when you want to talk about something, and do it in totality. Don't have revisionist history. And I can say this about Gillie. Where my camera at?
Right.
Gillie ain't run.
Okay. Heard. Okay. Oskino.
So a few things that I want to take away from what Beanie Siegel had to say. Journalism and gossip. All right. You see, as an outsider looking in, again, I believe Oskino spoke about an event where Beanie Siegel, at a time in the past when Beanie Siegel, I guess, wasn't getting along with Gillie the Kid, there was a interaction where Beanie Siegel might have been whipping Gillie, allegedly. Right, but Oskino probably brought that up to take shots at Gillie, but he used a story that didn't involve him, and it involved Gillie and Beanie. So Beanie's looking at that as like, you're talking about stuff that's gossip. Now, had it been a situation Oskino sharing about himself and Gillie, that would be different. I guess those in the street would still look at it as gossip because they're like, why are you bringing up old stories? But listen, it's safe to say there's just no rules, all right? 1 minute the streets is talking about snitching. Don't snitch, you a snitch, you a rat. I'm just talking about in general. This is what the streets have been saying throughout the years. They like to define certain people. They like to categorize certain individuals as rats, as snitches. But then it's the same people in the streets that are sharing old stories. Is that snitching? If you're sharing a story about the past that no one in the world knew about, but you're sharing it on interviews, is that considered snitching? It's listen. Let me just go back to Beanie Siegel talking about journalism and gossip. Here's the difference that I see in journalism and gossip. And by all means, if you disagree with me, I'll see you in the comment section. Journalism to me, at least in the podcast space, because I'm not going to compare the podcast space to what writers do for big newspapers like the New York Times, you know, the Boston, what is the Boston's paper? Is it the Boston Herald? Boston, whatever the Boston paper is. Boston, New York papers, the major cities, those newspapers that come out the major cities, that is real journalistic work. But in the podcast space, it's still a relatively new space. It's still being developed. It's still in its infant stage. Maybe it's in its toddler stage at this point. Maybe not infant stage, but podcasting as a whole would be in its toddler stage, in my opinion. The difference between what podcasters do and with these interviews, it's still a form of journalism, because if they're interviewing individuals that are sharing their real account stories, I don't see that as gossip, because it's especially if it's the individual speaking on a situation that dealt with them in particular. That would be firsthand information. I don't see that as gossip, but I could understand why some people would see that as gossip, because it's like you're sharing stories of the past. But yet we see this time and time again. Men from the music industry sharing stories of the past. Is that gossip or is that journalism? And then I don't even know who Beanie Siegel's speaking about when he's talking about journalism or gossip. To me, it's journalism if someone and obviously I'm being biased to podcasters. If you're in the podcast space and you're speaking about this stuff, I would look at that as journalism, because you're speaking on stuff that's public knowledge. These gentlemen, they go on different platforms, they speak about old stories, and then as a podcaster, we react to it. So it's journalism. You know, we're not pulling information out the sky. We're not the cause of any of these stories. We're sharing this. We're reacting to these stories and putting our take, our opinion, our thoughts on it. Oskino clearly, again, because he's not in the best of lights with Gillie the Kid, shared that story maybe to take a shot at Gillie the Kid, show that there's a chink in his armor. But Beanie Siegel didn't like that. So now here's Oskino speaking on it, and this is what he had to say.
I do it to get his money, and then same thing, make you laugh, make you cry. But you should have cried about when you got knocked the fuck out. If you on the food truck making hot sausages and cheesesteaks and onion rings, don't worry about how I get my money. You know what I'm saying? I don't knock you for selling food. I do it to get his money, and then same thing, make you laugh, make you cry.
All right, so he's saying, I guess Beanie Siegel in the full interview might have said something about the way Oskino makes his money. Now, I only showed you a short clip. So in this clip, he didn't speak about Oskino's money. But going back to what Beanie Siegel said about journalism and gossip, is this a bunch of name calling going back and forth between men, and none of it is right. None of it is right. Now, if they're just sharing an old story without trying to bash somebody from the past, then it all depends too, because this is why you have to watch things in its full context. For both interviews, this one was from the Danza Project. You have to hear what the actual host, the person who's hosting the particular podcast, what questions are they asking? Are they asking them questions that force them, or is trying to get them to speak of the past? Because here's the thing, gentlemen, for any person going on a podcast, you don't have to answer questions you don't want to answer, especially if you feels like it's going to take you down a rabbit hole of a back and forth with another person from the past. And this goes back to my episode with with the Bronze Bomber when he lost his cool on set when he was interviewed, and they brought up Tyson Fury, the Deontay Wilder episode. This is the same thing. Even with and this is why I said podcasting is on the toddler stage, because a lot of us are going on podcasts, and when I say a lot of us, I'm talking about those of us in the music industry, black men. We're going on these podcasts, and based on the questions, we're just answering the questions, not caring about the repercussions, the back and forth that it puts us in. Some of us may not care about the back and forth that we have, but it's like, why do it, especially at this age? Why share old stories that are just going to bring negative energy towards you? And this has nothing to do about whether or not you fear the next person for hearing what you have to say about them. It's just, why even entertain it? And again, I'm gonna continue to ask this on various episodes. Why exactly are we putting energy into things that don't that have no relevance in our future, that don't nourish our future, that don't help propel our future? Why are we putting energy into these old stories that mean nothing now? Are we trying to make new stories? Are we trying to clash with people from the past again? Years down the road, decades down the road, are we trying to reclash? Why are we bringing up old stories? Now, for some of these men, the reason why they continue bringing up each other's names is because their past, unfortunately, was face-to-face in the streets, and maybe there's backstories that no one in the podcast, that no one in the podcast world knows of. But at some point, we have to hold each other accountable. When we get to a certain ages, we got to find ways to just leave the past in the past. And even if that means just saying, I don't want to talk about that, and standing on it. Deontay Wilder, I talked about, this is why they have media training. I think we need to start considering media and training in the podcast realm also, in the podcast space. We need to, and if we don't want to invest in media training, I'm pretty sure you could look up on YouTube ways to answer questions or not answer questions. These tools, I'm sure there's apps out there. I know from time to time I get pop-ups on social media about training on how to improve vocabulary. I'm sure there's training how to improve handling certain questions, tough questions, when you're being interviewed. Because it seems as though many of us in this space, this podcast space, we're falling into that trap of talking about one another, and it's not getting us anywhere. And again, it doesn't add value to where we're trying to go in the future. Many of us are soon to be, if not already, grandparents. And we're jumping on these podcasts and we're feuding with one another. And for what reason? Doesn't put money in your pocket. It just brings negative energy. It just keeps the negative energy lurking around you. And for what reason do you want to keep replenishing the negative energy? I, for one, could care. I could care not one bit for negative energy. Wherever negative energy is, I'm going the opposite direction. And it's not out of fear. It's just, I just don't have the energy to deal with it. There's so much other things I want to accomplish before my time is up. I don't want to be dealing with negative energy. And if an individual comes around my way with negative energy, I'm separating from them immediately. I don't want no parts of it. And again, this is not about being fearful. It's about knowing the value of this life that I have. And I think many of us that are entertainers, non-entertainers, I think we really need to take time out as men and evaluate what's important to us. If nothing's important to us and we're choosing to crash out in our late age, I can't tell you anything. You're a grown man. But if you know you have things that are valuable to you, more valuable than past stories, let's just stop sharing it. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to stop reporting it. I'm going to always report it. Why? Because I'm going to report it and wrap it up the way I'm trying to wrap this episode up, with the bigger picture. And I think that's good journalism, is to report something but don't just leave it out there for people to figure it out. I don't think that's good journalism. Now, we're not talking about the journalism of the newspapers and of the late night news. This is different in the podcast world. I think in the podcast world, even though it's still in its toddler stage, as I mentioned, I think it's still our responsibility to give it the value that it needs to separate from what we see on the news. The news just reports and just goes on to the next story. They don't care about the conclusion necessarily. They're just letting you know this is what happened over here, and let's get to the next report, and the next report, and the next report. I think in the podcast space, there should be a discussion about what we're talking about these topics react to. And it should be a healthy discussion, especially if those reporting are grown men. I think there should be a healthy discussion and a conclusion to wrap it up. That's just my thoughts. Some of you may disagree, and that's fine. I think there should be a healthy discussion, especially as grown men, to wrap things up rather than just leave it as is. Because if you leave it as is, I look at that as gossip. If you don't talk against things that are negative, then what good are you? What good is your channel? But that's my thoughts on this. What's your thoughts on what I had to say? What's your thoughts on what Beanie Siegel said about gossip and journalism? What's your thoughts on Oskino talking about Beanie Siegel? By the way, let me just say this. The whole food truck thing, I know Oskino's talking about that to shame Beanie Siegel. Listen, there's nothing wrong with having a food truck. If that brings him peace, listen, the grass is not greener on the other side. Some of us may look at it like, well, Beanie Siegel, he had it all. He was with Jay-Z doing shows. Who says that was peaceful? That time was peaceful. You don't know what comes with that type of success when everybody's in your face because you're a quote-unquote celebrity. That doesn't necessarily bring a man peace. That's like a whole nother subject too. That doesn't necessarily brings a man peace. Who knows if before rapping he always enjoyed cooking. And then so now he has a food truck, and I believe he's also establishing a restaurant. I think I saw that most recently, aside from the food truck. But who knows if that brings him peace? If that brings that man's peace, then who are we to say like, oh, he's got a food truck, worry about the food truck? Who are we to say that? And if he was saying that to take a jab at him, that may not be a jab at all if that's what he wants to do. If he feels fulfilled doing it, that's not even a jab. But I'm just gonna end with this. My humble opinion, both Oskino and Siegel should find ways to just coexist and just leave the past in the past. And I don't just say that to these two gentlemen. I say this to many of us that continue to feud in the podcast space. We got to find a way to keep the past in the rearview mirror. It just doesn't look good for us. It just adds nothing to what we're trying to do, and it makes us all look like buffoons at the end of the day. Makes us all look like buffoons, because it's only in this space are we constantly feuding among each other. What are we doing? But listen, that's my thoughts on all this. I appreciate everyone for tuning in. On your way out, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Tell a friend to tell a friend. I drop episodes daily at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And as always, stay honorable.